Let's get started with our first news. What's next for Leon Edwards after his UFC loss? Today, we dive into what's next for Leon Edwards after his devastating UFC loss. Edwards and his team may have been planning to retain the welterweight throne, but after what went down at UFC London, there are serious doubts about whether that will ever happen. Before we continue, make sure to leave a like on the video to help support the channel. Now, let's talk about what happened in that fight. Edwards faced Sean Brady in the main event, and as some analysts predicted, Brady's wrestling and top game proved to be too much for the former champion. From the opening bell, Brady applied pressure, pushed the pace, and made it clear he had a game plan: take Edwards down and control him. By the second round, it was obvious that it wasn't going to be Rocky's night. Brady's relentless pressure, well-timed takedowns, and ability to dominate on the ground started to wear Edwards down. Then, in the fourth round, Brady sealed the deal with a tight guillotine choke, forcing Edwards to tap. It was a statement victory for Brady, who now moves one step closer to title contention. A major factor to consider is Edwards' age. He will be turning 34 this summer, meaning the clock is winding down on his prime years. So what will the UFC decide? Will they push Edwards into a gatekeeper role, facing up-and-coming fighters looking to break into the top 5? Or will they give him a chance to rebound and work his way back into title contention? Could the UFC book him against the winner of the upcoming fight between Jeff Neal and Carlos Prates? That could be an interesting matchup. And what about Sean Brady? With a win like this, he's now in the title shot mix and could be just one fight away from a championship opportunity. So, what do you think? Who should Leon Edwards fight next? And does Sean Brady deserve a title shot after this huge win? Let us know in the comments. Arman Tsarukyan is still waiting to book his next fight, and it sounds like he's getting frustrated. He was originally scheduled to fight Islam Makhachev at UFC 301 in January, but the number one contender pulled out just hours before due to a reported back injury. Although the Armenian fighter has gone 9-1 since his initial bout with Islam and seemingly secured a title shot, Dana White announced that Tsarukyan would not be fighting for the belt next. The belief is that the UFC wasn't thrilled with Arman's withdrawal. Now, with April fast approaching, it's unclear when or who Tsarukyan will fight next. Recently, the 28-year-old took aim at his fellow contenders via social media, posting, "I'm the true number one contender, ready to prove it against anyone. But how am I supposed to do that when everyone else just wants to fight on paper? Charles, Justin, you can sit and wait." Or, what do you think? Who should Tsarukyan fight next? Should he get a title shot, or does he need one more big win to solidify his case? It'll be interesting to see who the UFC taps to face Arman next. Since he and Gaethje have never fought, and given each man's skill set, there's a lot to like about that matchup. Of course, after all the drama at UFC 311, Volkanovski has vacated the featherweight title and is moving up to lightweight. As a result, there's widespread speculation that the UFC is looking to book Makhachev versus Topuria next. Considering both men are among the best fighters in the world, this fight would generate massive interest. However, in a recent interview with KO Monero MMA, Charles Oliveira took a jab at that idea. "I'm looking for a title, and today's champion is Islam Makhachev. Topuria is a very tough guy, and he deserves all the respect in the world, but right now, I don't see it as a big fight. If I'm chasing the belt, I have to fight Makhachev to win and become champion again." You can't blame Oliveira for wanting another shot at Makhachev, but not everyone agrees that Islam versus Ilya isn't a big fight. In fact, Topuria himself responded to Charles, "Charles, it's better if you stay quiet. You have 10 losses, 5 by knockout, 4 by submission, and 1 by decision. You are the contender, while I am the champion, the father of the entire division. I haven't come here to ask for anything. Here, I am the one in charge. What's your take on Du Bronx's comments and Topuria's response? It's been a little while since Ilya vacated the featherweight title to make a run at lightweight, and as the MMA world eagerly awaits his next move, it looks like Dana White might have some big news coming soon. As we covered earlier, the general belief is that the UFC is pushing hard to book a massive fight between Islam Makhachev and Ilia Topuria. Rumors have been swirling that this potential all-star bout could happen as soon as June, making it one of the most anticipated matchups of the year. Recently, Dana White sat down with TNT and was, of course, asked the big question: what's next for Ilia Topuria? While the UFC CEO didn't explicitly spill all the details, he stopped short of denying the possibility of the fight happening. Instead, he hinted that fans won't have to wait much longer for an official announcement. Here's what Dana had to say: "We're still working on that. We're working on the plan for Ilya. We should have some announcements about him. Give us just a couple more weeks, and we'll have some concrete plans. But as of right now, that is true. He's vacating, he's moving up, and we'll figure out the rest in the next couple of weeks." The fact that White is keeping things under wraps is definitely interesting. Could this mean that Topuria versus Makhachev is actually happening? Or is the UFC deliberately delaying an announcement while considering other opponents for both fighters? If Islam versus Ilia doesn't happen next, the big question is, who will Topuria fight instead? Could the UFC book him against a top contender in the lightweight division before giving him a title shot? Or is his star power too big right now for anything other than a championship fight? One thing is clear: Topuria's move to lightweight is official, and he's coming in with bad intentions. He dominated the featherweight division, and now he's looking to do the same at 155 lbs. So what do you think? Who should Ilya fight next? Did Dana's words hint that Topuria will face Makhachev next, or could we see a different opponent for El Matador? Let us know in the comments below. Joe Rogan says, Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev is not happening. During Fight Companion, Joe Rogan made a bold statement that shook up the MMA community. He doesn't believe the highly anticipated showdown between Islam Makhachev and Ilia Topuria is actually going to happen. Here's exactly what Rogan had to say: "I don't think that's happening. I wonder what they're going to do with Topuria. I like Topuria versus Oliveira. Oliveira is so tall, so dangerous everywhere. Huge reach advantage. Those lightweights are really big. Islam's huge." This is a pretty big claim from one of the most respected voices in MMA. Rogan has been following the fight game for decades and has seen how matchups are made behind the scenes. If he's saying Makhachev versus Topuria isn't happening, then there could be something major going on that we don't know about yet. The idea of Topuria versus Oliveira is also very intriguing. Charles Oliveira is an absolute monster in the Octagon. His submissions, striking, and experience make him one of the most dangerous fighters in the lightweight division. Rogan points out that Oliveira's size and reach would be a huge factor against Topuria, who is moving up from featherweight. So could the UFC actually book Topuria versus Oliveira instead of a title fight with Makhachev? It's definitely a possibility. Oliveira is still a top contender, and if he's not next in line for a title shot, a fight with Topuria could serve as the perfect #1 contender matchup. But let's not forget, Ilia Topuria has made it clear that Topuria wants the belt. He vacated his featherweight title specifically to move up and challenge for lightweight gold. Would he really accept a fight with Oliveira instead of Makhachev? Or is the UFC trying to build up the fight by creating uncertainty before making it official? One thing is for sure: Topuria is ready for war, no matter who he faces next. Whether it's Makhachev, Oliveira, or another top contender, El Matador is stepping into the lightweight division with bad intentions. So, what do you think? Would you rather see Topuria versus Makhachev, or do you like the idea of Topuria versus Oliveira? Let us know in the comments below. Colby Covington, predicts Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev. In another exciting story, Colby Covington and Tim Welch recently broke down the highly anticipated potential superfight between Islam Makhachev and Ilia Topuria. While there has been a lot of hype and speculation surrounding this fight, opinions are divided on how things could play out inside the Octagon. According to Colby Covington, Topuria has the power and striking ability to pull off an upset against the lightweight champion. Meanwhile, Welch believes Makhachev's wrestling will be the key factor in determining the outcome. One of the biggest concerns for Makhachev's fans is his first fight against Alexander Volkanovski. Despite having no wrestling background, Volkanovski was able to consistently get back to his feet after being taken down. At one point, he even ended up on top of Makhachev, raising questions about how dominant Islam's wrestling really is. Meanwhile, Topuria comes from a Greco-Roman wrestling background, which could potentially help him find success in grappling exchanges. Unlike Volkanovski, who relied on scrambling, Topuria has technical wrestling skills, which might make it much harder for Makhachev to hold him down. Covington also pointed out an interesting factor. His former teammate Dustin Poirier may have laid out a blueprint for beating Islam. In their fight, Poirier had moments of success, proving that Makhachev isn't invincible. Covington believes that if Topuria follows a similar strategy and uses his striking effectively, he could pull off a major upset. At the same time, Welch disagrees, believing that Makhachev's takedowns will be the deciding factor. He broke down the potential matchup, explaining how Islam might exploit Topuria's wide boxing stance. According to Welch, Topuria's stance is wide, and he doesn't kick too much. That could make it easier for Islam to get in on a high crotch, take him down, and put him in half guard. If that happens, it's going to be a long night for Topuria. Ultimately, the big question is whether Makhachev will be able to secure takedowns consistently, or if Topuria will be slippery enough to escape. Yesterday, UFC President Dana White also spoke about Topuria's future, confirming that big news about the Georgian fighter will be announced in the coming weeks. Could this mean Islam versus Topuria is happening soon? Finally, let's wrap it up with our last story. Khamzat Chimaev gets into a street fight in London. In a recent interview, undefeated middleweight Khamzat Chimaev dropped some wild news that has the MMA world buzzing. Just a couple of days ago, Chimaev revealed that he was involved in a street altercation while in London. Khamzat Chimaev gets into a street fight. In London, Khamzat Chimaev is known as one of the scariest and most feared fighters in the UFC. But even outside the Octagon, trouble seems to find him. According to Chimaev, the situation began when he was approached by a stranger. At first he thought it was just a regular fan looking for a handshake or a photo. But things took a turn when the man suddenly started provoking him.